And so to our first person tonight, Michelle Bachelet. She served not just once, but twice as the president of Chile. She was the first woman to hold that office. And she went on to head Yes. Michelle Bachelet, she likes doing everything in twos. Twice the president of Chile. She went on to head 2 UN agencies, UN Women, UN Commissioner for Human Rights. She trained as a pediatrician, but ended up being the Minister of Defense. And she is nominated by Brazil and also by Mexico. Welcome. Michelle Bachelet, let us begin. We're going to allow you 5 minutes to set out your vision for why you want this job and what are you going to do with it. And I have to tell you that discipline is a part of democracy. I'll give you a 1-minute warning when 4 minutes are up, and then I'll have to say it ends there at 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Please do, Liz, because I'm Latin American,
yes.
So do that. Well, the Excellencies and dear friends, my candidacy for Secretary General of the United Nations is grounded on one clear conviction. We must build the United Nations the world needs, a UN that not merely administers the present, but one with the capacity to transform it. An organization that's more effective, more transparent, closer to the people, and capable of delivering concrete results. My own vision was born of a difficult and sometimes improbable miracle of dialogue, even though when all odds were against it. I have seen its transformation, it's transformed the impossible into the achievable. Trust in the international order and trust in our institution are mutually reinforcing. Both require robust experience and firm commitment to the Charter. I stand before you to reclaim the urgent need for dialogue, because deliberation and multilateral cooperation have been the operative platform upon which this organization was built, and they remain the bridge to our future. I believe in a United Nations that looks in 4 directions at once. First, backwards. It remains true to the principles of the Charter. I think the principles of the Charter are the moral and political compass of the international system. Any reform must serve to better realize that founding vision. Second, inward, to modernize and strengthen the institution with transparency, efficiency, and accountability, eliminating redundancies while eliminating field capacities, and turning reform from an episodic effort into continuous, day-to-day commitment. Third, if I said backward, inward, third is outward, to reconnect with people. The UN's legitimacy depends on its ability to deliver concrete results. Because if people do not see the UN working, they will not believe in multilateralism. And fourth, forward, to collectively design the future. The centennial of 2045 is a working horizon. We must design the UN of the future today, with gender parity in the Secretariat, with real representation from all regions, and with the 3 pillars, peace and security, development and human rights, properly financed and balanced. The United Nations rests on 3 deeply interconnected pillars: peace and security, sustainable development, and human rights. On peace and security, prevention must lie at the heart of our action. Quiet diplomacy, early warning, sustained engagement with regional actors, and professional mediation are always more effective than reacting after crisis already erupted. The Secretary General must remain an active channel of communication even when consensus seems distant, and must be present also, Mr. Secretary General, in the field. On sustainable development, our priorities must be to eradicate hunger and poverty, reduce inequalities, close the digital divide, and advance meaningful climate action, among other things, so that we may leave young generations a world that offers them opportunity, dignity, and hope. This also requires a genuine reform of the international financial architecture, so that the most vulnerable countries are not left behind. On human rights, human dignity must remain at the center of everything the UN does. Human rights are not only the foundation of a life lived in dignity, they are also a preventive instrument for lasting peace and global stability. And central to this is the empowerment of women, girls, and youth, whose full and meaningful participation in peace processes and decision-making is essential to building more just and resilient countries and societies. I think that one of the unique elements of the United Nations is that the only irreplaceable space where humanity comes together to overcome common challenges in a world fragmented by disinformation, polarization, and competition for power.
30 seconds.
The UN must be a place where difference becomes consensus, words outweigh violence, and where collective decisions reflect our shared responsibility to preserve peace and human dignity. The 21st century demands a UN that anticipates, that prevents, that unites. I am ready to lead that effort with experience, commitment, and the deep conviction that multilateralism with the work changes lives.
Not surprisingly, you've emphasized how human rights has to be at the center of the leader of the United Nations. What makes you qualified? And in fact, I should ask, why would you want this job? You saw when you were the High Commissioner the tug between the world powers, between China and the United States, between speaking out in public and getting access in private. What skill do you have that you can bring to the role?
Well, I think my skill is not only being at the UN, it's the whole history of my life. Because my personal political trajectory has deeply shaped myself. Having been a young girl when the coup d'etat happened in my country, my father, who really believed in rule of law, was put into prison and died by torture. Me and my mom was also in prison and went to exile. And then I learned what happens when institutions fail, when some people take power and don't respect the rule of law. And then afterwards being in exile, I learned the importance of multilateralism because I saw solidarity with the people who were suffering. And I think not only because of the help of countries, external countries, of course, the battle for democracy in our own country, but support for important countries help Chile go back to democracy. When I was elected president of Chile, the first woman president of my country, I also served twice, and also served as cabinet member, as health minister and defense minister, also the first in those positions. And as you know, and as the first executive director of UN Women, and afterwards as High Commissioner of Human Rights, in 20 years of my public life, both in national and international, I have combined the fundamental principles with realistic practical leadership. But I have been in places where I have to deal with very complicated situations.
And very powerful forces.
Yeah, and I have been able to do that. You know? And also another thing, I think it gives me how the way I act, is that I'm a physician, a pediatrician, and an epidemiologist. So I'm not only looking at the symptoms, I'm looking at the root causes, because if you don't understand what's there, you won't find the real solution. And just one example, there are like many countries that have been there, they had every weekend fights, killings, and it was not, there was different ethnic groups, but it was not a matter of identity. It was a matter of lack of water and soil. So if you want to find the solutions to those and prevent conflict from happening, you need to understand really, and for that, you need to be on the ground.
Okay, well, we've got a lot of questions for you, but first I have to ask you, the 148 billion campaign, you're nodding, you know about it. The UNA UK is obviously part of it. They've called on all candidates to commit publicly to 5 principles, and everyone here is going to remember, so only tell the truth and nothing but the truth. Publishing financial disclosures, engaging with civil society, participating in transparent General Assembly and Security Council processes, respecting Article 100 of the UN Charter, which means, of course, independence from member states, and avoiding conflicts of interest with any current UN role. They want those principles to define this campaign. Do you commit to them, and why?
I have to add one. It's only one mandate.
One.
To be elected and to do, that's also in the
Yes.
one for 8 billion.
Yes.
I could subscribe it now. I could subscribe it right now.
All of them. Yeah.
All of them, because that's what I've tried to do throughout my whole life. Yeah? That's what I believe in. And I believe that you have to make the best decisions with independence. We have to appoint the best possible person. I mean, there's always going to be, pressures. But in my life, I've shown that pressure doesn't paralyze me. I make decisions because I believe. I was on the hearing at the General Assembly, very happily, 3 hours. It was long, but it was really important because member states could listen to what I was thinking about many issues. And I'm looking forward if there are hearings in the Security Council soon. And I've been trying to have activities with civil society in this process. So I think for the fifth principle that you know, for more than 2 years, I'm not part of the UN. So I have no conflict of interest on that.
Okay. We'll look forward to hearing you speaking out loudly if there's something happening behind closed doors. Let's go to the audience. We have our first question from Captain Kibria, who's from the Dr. Mustafa Hazara Foundation, a non-profit humanitarian foundation. Captain Kibria, the floor is yours.
We think that he hasn't made it, and we'll ask you to read it out.
Oh, that's... God, if the captains didn't make it, then what about all the rest?
I hope he's preventing a conflict.
Okay, we hope he wasn't prevented. And let me read his question. In today's increasingly complex global environment, do you believe the Secretary General should be entrusted with limited independent authority to undertake urgent peace and humanitarian initiatives when swift action is essential for the protection of human lives and international stability? So should you have the authority to intervene swiftly when lives are at stake? And needed to say, when major powers are involved.
Yeah, well, I think you can do a lot. You can do a lot as Secretary General. First of all, I mentioned the 3 key tools and roles of the UN, because I believe that when some countries say we need to go back to basics and think that peace and security is the only thing, I don't agree with that. I think you won't have peace and security if you don't have development and if you violate human rights. So we need the 3 of them. And I will do my best to insist that the 3 of them needs to be supported, funded, etc. The second thing is I think the Charter has a lot of tools available: early warning, good offices, mediation. And I am a person who's not waiting to do those things. If I realize that a conflict will come, I will try to anticipate myself, to go before to the field. And if it's not able to prevent it, to work on mediation, to use our good offices. I mean, sometimes you try things and they don't work, but I think you have to insist trying.
Yes, because I think everyone here knows that all the major wars of our time, be it Ukraine, be it Gaza, be it Sudan, be it the Iran war, the UN is not involved. What can you do to change that? What would you do differently?
Well, what I say, there are many different reasons, because there has been sort of a tendency of sort of not supporting multilateral solution and supporting unilateral solution or multilateral solutions. And I believe that there are always situations that group of countries can help, of course, that's fine, it's always been like that, or they can mediate, but it has to be under the coordination and coherence with the United Nations, with the Security Council. But I do believe, if I'm a Secretary General, I will go there to the field. I won't wait until they invite me to go. I will go there. If it's necessary, I'll be in front of the building of the Minister for Foreign Affairs, because I believe the Secretary General is if I would say, the more important diplomat in the world, and he has to be a moral voice. So I will speak, but I will go to the field, because there is a discussion. Should I be a secretary or a general?
You'll be more general, given your defense.
I mean, you have to be the chief administrator, according to the charter, but I have to be a general as well.
Okay. I think that was a good answer. Timoteo Olatunde is from the Temvert Empowerment Foundation. It's a youth empowerment organization, mainly working in Nigeria. The question: civil society organizations, particularly those led by young people in the Global South, face persistent barriers to meaningful UN participation, including accreditation delays, funding gaps, exclusion from decision-making. What concrete steps will you take to ensure civil society is genuinely included in shaping UN policy, not merely consulted? In other words, just lip service. Concrete.
Well, I remember when I was a UN Women, there was a group working with girls, and they said, I don't want to be at the table. I want to decide the shape of the table. And I understand that's the same thing that these people are saying. I believe, first of all, there's a lot can be done with ECOSOC, because ECOSOC is the one who accredits which are NGOs, civil society organizations that can be observers, that can participate. So that can be, I would say, improved. All those procedures can be improved because it takes too long, and that means that you have to ensure that more civil society organizations, NGOs, can be present at the different places. We need, though, I have to say, to ensure that they get visas so they can participate in many of these. Because I saw in the CSW very few women from some parts of the world. And I asked, what was it? Is it the cost of the ticket? No, they said they didn't get the visa. So we need to ensure that that happens as well. We need to enforce the youth office. We need to support the youth office so it can make much more than what it's doing now. So I believe that also we have the solution 2250 that on youth and peace and security. And I think we need to make it a reality because that is written, but you have to implement it.
Another question. Suvira Chakravarti, formerly from UNIFEM, UNDP from the United States. What actions will you take to address the current and growing anti-gender backlash by UN member states, including restrictions on civic spaces, which are threats to peace, development, and especially women's human rights?
Well, everybody who knows me knows that I've been my whole life pushing for gender equality, for women's empowerment. I'm continuing doing so as Secretary General or as not as Secretary General. So I think we need to continue building upon what Secretary General Guterres have done, because he has ensured that in all senior positions, women and men are paritarian, 50-50. But that has to go down as well. But also in the Secretariat, you have to have better representation, gender representation, geographical representation, etc. We also need to continue speaking out loud about women's rights and to ensure that we don't have a bigger backlash. I saw that backlash when I was UN Women, and will continue doing that job. We need to build alliances with governments to push for gender rights. And the other question was, and the same with civic space. I mean, we need people being part of the solution. I mean, even in our common agenda, we said that we need to redefine what the international community was. It was not only about intergovernmental. It needed also to have all these other aspects, civil society, academia, private sector, etc. So that we need to continue opening the civic spaces and trying also to reach out member states to continue doing so.
The clock is ticking, but I want to ask you, this is going to be a two-word answer, a one-word answer from you, because I want a very specific example. If you were the Secretary General, if you were going to deal with the, some would say, the apartheid policies of the Taliban in Afghanistan, one-word answer, would you engage or would you isolate them?
I would engage.
Okay.
And I did that as High Commissioner.
Okay. An audience question again, which I will also read. Nicholas Candido, who's from Plataforma CIPÓ in Brazil, you may know it, independent women-led policy institute. When the UN was created, climate was not a primary concern. Today, climate instability impacts livelihoods and ecosystems globally, yet the UN is ill-equipped to address its scale and urgency. What reforms would you implement to ensure adequate resources for an effective climate response?
Well, first of all, I think if I'm Secretary General, I have to maintain climate change in the agenda, because some countries are saying that climate change doesn't exist. Some countries are discussing about going back to coal, and other fossil combustibles. And I think that's very dangerous. So we need, first of all, to continue showing science evidence why climate change is a reality, and we need to maintain. And then we need to think on how we finance it, because climate action needs support. And today, you know, the countries who has less contributed to the climate change, to the problems, are the ones who receive less money. So we need to think in innovative mechanisms, for example, like debt climate swaps, or other mechanisms that can ensure that countries who are not the responsible one can really have the resources to do their mitigation and adaptation plans and so on.
Question from the floor, Freddie Carver. Freddie Carver, good. Captain Freddie Carver from ODI, the independent global affairs think tank based in London. Your question, Freddie.
Thank you very much. One of the challenges for the UN-led humanitarian system is that it receives criticism from all sides, from crisis-affected populations who complain that their most important needs are often not met, particularly around safety and security, from actors in the global north, particularly on the right of politics, who argue that the system is fragmented, bureaucratic, inefficient, too expensive, and also from many voices in the global north, in the global south, who argue that the humanitarian system dominates space and funding, apart from global south and civil society. Yet the focus of the UN system in the last 12 months has been very much around cost-cutting, around prioritization, and has struggled to meet some of these more strategic questions and challenges. How would you address those challenges if you became Secretary General?
Well, I think that one of the main tasks that the UN has to ensure is to protect lives. And protect lives not only trying to avoid conflicts, but also to deal with the results not only on conflict, but because you need humanitarian assistance also when you have diseases, when you have natural disasters, and so on. So I believe that humanitarian assistance is key, but it has to be also related to the other areas that we need to work on. Because, of course, we have to provide humanitarian assistance when the things are happening, but as I said before, we need to prevent them from happening, because probably there will never be enough resources to solve all those problems. And prevention is essentially to avoid not only the losses of life, the situation you mentioned, but also the cost that it means. But on the other hand, I believe there is a huge group of people with a lot of experience that have done a fantastic job on humanitarian assistance. And I think we need to continue supporting them strongly.
But you worry that cost-cutting would dominate your agenda, would have to dominate, with almost the percentage of funding has gone down in recent years by nearly 25%.
Well, I think...
Again, we're back to existential.
Yeah, I mean, I know that the UNAID reform, it's mainly being pushed because of cost-cutting and because of lack of liquidity. But if you have savings, making all those initiatives that the reform intends to do, avoiding the redundancy and so on, that needs to be put those money in the areas that you prioritize. Again, I will look like somebody who's repeating, but human rights, development, and peace and security. Because the thing of the reform is not to do more with less, it's to do better and put the money where the priorities are.
Because you believe the critics who say it is too bloated, you do need to slim it down?
No, I do believe that the UN has to be leaner, but muscle. Not leaner, but weak. So one of the things that I believe, and I will push strongly, is that it can be a reform. It must be a reform. It's an opportunity as well. But what cannot happen is to diminish the field capacity. And it cannot happen not to do what it needs to do, because otherwise we're losing the essentials that make this new organization exist.
Michelle Bachelet, the world would want a UN Secretary General who's not just focused on the job, but also find ways to keep their mental health to keep sane. You have 30 seconds to give us a little hint. How does Michelle Bachelet relax?
Well, I'm not sure I can that answer, because when things are very complicated, you need to be there and energetically. The only thing that I want to say is that for me to be a Secretary General is not to be the glory of to be the first women Secretary General. I have many glories in my life, and I don't need more.
So what is your hobby? You've got 5 seconds.
My hobby, read, dance.
Oh, dancing.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And that one thing I said, I would like to be a Secretary General if it's worthy, if I can be really independent, neutral, and serve all member states. That is what I would like.
Well, I think we would all want you to be able to achieve that. Michelle Bachelet, thank you very much.